Next up, the NFC West, finishing up NFC draft grades with the Western Division. How did the 49ers and the Cardinals and the Rams and the Seattle Seahawks fare in the 2022 NFL Draft? Coming up right now.
You're listening to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show, your daily podcast on the National Football League, powered by the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock and Matt Williamson with you once again at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks for making Peacock and Williamson your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. Little programming note, later on in the week, we are going to talk about Matt Williamson. He just dropped on me that he's got his Dynasty rookie rankings this year ready to go and formulated. So we'll talk a little bit about that later on in the week. We'll have a live show again Tuesday, our Twitter Tuesday live. So bring the Twitter questions, but more importantly, join us live on the YouTube broadcast. It will be noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific time, Tuesday. Get into the chat and we'll answer your questions there as well on tomorrow's program. But how about the NFC West, Matt? I was looking at this division, and I
bet you were.
I remember it happening. I've been very closely paying attention to this division, and especially the 49ers draft. But the Seattle Seahawks drafted 3 times before anybody else in the division took a single player.
Oh, wow. I didn't put 2 and 2 together on that. That's very interesting to me because, well, Trey Lance, Matthew Stafford, Von Miller, Marquise Brown, all these stud, veterans have been infused into your division.
Yep, absolutely. And the Seahawks were the only team that had a first-round pick. We'll get to them later. Let's start alphabetical here with the Arizona Cardinals. And you mentioned Hollywood Brown. They made that big move on day 1 of the draft, trading away their first-round pick. They got a third back, and Hollywood Brown now part of that offense. Very close with Kyler Murray. They were college teammates. Better fit for Hollywood? First of all, is it an upgrade for Hollywood? Is it an upgrade for the Cardinals to have bypassed on a first-round pick and just brought in their wide receiver there?
I think there's some value in making Kyler Murray happy, too. That reuniting, I think they had to know Hopkins was getting suspended as well, so maybe you'd pay a little bit more than you would have otherwise. I think it's very good for Marquise Brown, for Hollywood. And I'm a little hesitant. Anything's better than Baltimore, frankly, for a 170-pound receiver. He takes the top off, and he was good there, but a more wide-open offense is going to do him a world of good. But not to jump the gun, the fact that they took Trey McBride with their first pick indicates to me that we might see more 12 personnel with 2 tight ends on the field. They also have Max Williams, who's a good blocker, and, of course, Ertz was re-signed, as opposed to tons of 4 receiver sets, especially while Hopkins is suspended. So I'm not saying they're going to all of a sudden come out with a neck roll fullback and a bunch of tight ends and extra offensive linemen, but they might try to get a little heavier because meanwhile their receivers are getting lighter and smaller.
Right. Well, their heavy is going to go from a 215-pound DeAndre Hopkins to 240-pound Trey McBride or Zach Ertz.
Yeah.
We're not talking about punch you in the face tight ends here on that Arizona Cardinals roster either. But that's kind of what I'm seeing here is speed still on the field and Rondale Moore and a couple of tight ends, but both are pass catching options. So still pass heavy, still move fast, but maybe get a little bit more size there and help you out in the running game slightly and make Kyler Murray's job a little bit easier. But I assume they're still going to try to throw the ball, and pass catchers were their first 2 expenditures there in round 1 and round 2. So Trey McBride out of Colorado State, widely thought of as sort of the best tight end in this class. It wasn't a really top heavy tight end class here. We haven't had a really monster tight end class in a while, probably since all the way back in 2017 in the NFL draft. Then they came back with a defensive lineman, a lunch pail guy in Cam Thomas, San Diego State in round 3. Their second, third round pick, Myjai Sanders, Cincinnati, listed as a defensive end, but he goes only about 228 pounds. To be honest, when I watched Myjai Sanders, I did not like him. I think he's a tweener that doesn't fit either as a off-ball linebacker or even a stand-up pass rusher, and that's kind of what he has to be, as a stand-up pass rusher. He's going to get washed out if he tries to play defensive end. That's just not going to work. He's got to gain 40 pounds. Like he needs a lot of weight, and he's very spindly, and there's some athleticism, but I just didn't see a usable player in either role yet, and we'll see if he becomes one in either one of those roles, but I really get the feeling he's a tweener and will end up playing off-ball linebacker, because I don't know if he can hold up against the run at his size.
Yeah, and I don't know that he's Hassan Reddick for them either, you know.
Well, and that's what they got Hassan Reddick wrong. They should have been using him as the pass rusher all along. He was a pure pass rusher, clearly, and they tried to make him an off-ball linebacker, and that didn't work. And then he went elsewhere and became a monster pass rusher, which he should have been all along. It's worried that the same fate will happen with Myjai Sanders. Keontae Ingram in the 6th, so no picks in the 4th or 5th round, then 5 6th and 7th rounders here. Keontae Ingram, a running back from USC in round 6. Lecitus Smith, Virginia Tech guard in round 6, and then 3 7th rounders. Valdosta State making an appearance here. That's the only Valdosta State player drafted, as far as I know. A corner, Christian Matthew. Then Jesse Luketa from Penn State, outside linebacker, and Marquise Hayes, Oklahoma guard. So doubling up on guards on day 3 were the Arizona Cardinals. How do you feel about this one? And I guess you have to include Hollywood Brown in this.
Sure,
right?
Sure.
And so overall, they got some weapons on offense. They got a pass rusher on defense, a run defender / pass rusher in Cam Thomas, a player I like. I think this was a really good value for him. I saw him in 2nd round mocks, and I think round 3 is a better place for Cameron Thomas. So I feel really good about that one. And then I don't know, hopefully you flip some coins on some of these picks between late 3rd and 7th round.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, but I think we had this conversation pre-draft when we were doing some of our mocks. Arizona was always tough for me. Like if Zion Johnson was there, I usually gave him Zion Johnson, but recognize that edge with Chandler Jones gone, corner, another receiver. There was a lot of directions this team could go, maybe more than most, especially more than most playoff type teams. So and the more I look at this, I look at it like they added 2 pass catchers, 2 edge rushers, and 2 guards. So I don't want to, brush off the 2 guards. I understand it's the 215th pick and the 257th pick, but I liked both those players, especially Hayes from Oklahoma, much more than where they were drafted. And I don't know if there's injuries or what's going on there, but my hunch is one of them will be a starter for them. So not that they're Zion Johnson, but they needed a guard. They went after 2 of them. They needed an edge. They went after 2 of them. And those edge guys are very different to me, as are the pass catchers. McBride and Brown couldn't be any more different, and I'm going to put them, even though they play different positions, TE and WR, but they're both pass catchers. And I'm with you on Sanders. The only thing that I might dispute you a little on, but he's not for me, is I think he had weight issues because of an illness or whatever. Maybe he gets up to 255-ish or something like that, but he's not enough of a speedball off the edge for me to think that works. But I think Cam Thomas is one of the best picks in this entire draft. I mean, if you remember, he tweaked the hammy at the Senior Bowl, so we never really heard from him after that. But super productive, bigger body. I don't want to say he's Chandler Jones, but he's going to play that role and maybe even a little of the J.J. Watt stuff.
With Sanders, and I remember the illness stuff and the weight stuff, but he looked like
he doesn't play big.
He was light too, so the tape sort of matched someone who looked like they were in their 230s and not really in their 250s. But
you're right.
There's definitely traits there, and he's really a long player and athletic for sure. So maybe they can find something there, and you can see how that draft might have gone, where they thought, man, we want some speed off the edge, but Cameron Thomas is our best guy, but we have another pick in a dozen picks. If Sanders is still there, then we'll just get him too. And maybe we'll get a little bit of both. And, it'd be nice if you could put both those 2 players together into one, but you can't. So interesting draft there, and really a lot of protection for the loss for 6 weeks of their star receiver. And can AJ Green and really there's a lot of mouths to feed once DeAndre Hopkins does come back. So that game is going to be interesting, and we'll see if it's fun, and we'll see if they've done enough on the defensive side of the ball recently and replacing Chandler Jones to hang with teams in the NFC West. That's an interesting division. Let's move on to the Los Angeles Rams, the 49ers, and the Seattle Seahawks. Oh, I didn't give a letter grade to the Cardinals here. This is a tough one for me because you have to include
Packard
Hollywood.
and Brown, right? Yeah.
But you got to pay him eventually. So that's, it's not like they drafted although he does have the fifth-year option. I like McBride. I like Cameron Thomas. Then I don't like the rest. I'll go C+. I'm going to do a C+.
Okay. I'd probably be a little better to the Cards than that, but I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, like B- cusp. If you're a Cardinals fan and you're about to get really mad at me, how about it? How does B- sound?
Because you're a Niner homer.
All right, let's go. Rams, 49ers, Seahawks. Next, how about BetOnline, though? You can bet on who will be the rookie of the year on the offensive side of the ball, on the defensive side of the ball. I was looking at the odds, and there's nobody high on the list. Charles Cross was the highest player drafted in this division. I wouldn't waste your money on betting on an offensive lineman being offensive rookie of the year in the NFL. You would have to be pretty amazing. So, probably not much betting on the rookie class here in the NFC West. But you can find those odds at BetOnline, your number one source for all betting stats and sports information. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, news, including this year's NBA playoffs, Major League Baseball, horse racing. The Kentucky Derby was last weekend. Those are the types of things you can find at BetOnline. Anything sporting is there. Live betting, playoffs, esports as well. And you can find those Vegas casino games if you want to play a little blackjack in between sports bets. So get over to BetOnline today. Use your mobile device or your desktop and learn more about the trends and action at BetOnline, where the game starts. Thanks again, everybody, for making Peacock and Williamson your first listen every day. Make sure you're checking out all the rest that the network has to offer. Locked On covers every single team in the NFL. We're talking college and baseball and NBA. Your team is covered right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Okay, Matt. Los Angeles Rams. They had to wait a little while, and they were they were scouting Cole Strange, hoping he would get to pick 104. He did not get there. He got taken off the board at 29 overall. So they did go with the guard there at 104 late in the third round with one of those comp picks, and it was Logan Bruss, the Wisconsin guard, that came back in the fourth round with Jacoby Durant out of South Carolina State corner, Kyron Williams, Notre Dame running back in round 5. Quentin Lake, Carnell Lake's kid, safety out of UCLA in round 6, which was maybe my favorite pick of the day for them. I like him. I think maybe even some starting potential there for him. And instinctive, really like just not dynamic, just a loose athlete. And he's kind of where he needs to be all the time. He plays like the son of an NFL player. That's the way he looks out there on the field.
You're not going to have to sell me on Carnell Lake's kid. I can promise you that.
Exactly. Darian Kendrick out of Georgia, cornerback in round 6, and then 3 7-rounders, Daniel Hardy out of Montana State, the linebacker, safety, Russ Yeast from Kansas State, all-name team there, and offensive tackle A.J. Arcuri from Michigan State. Clearly, it's not going to be a high grade because they don't care about draft picks, and they wouldn't have picked it all on day 1 or 2 if they didn't have that comp pick late round 3 in Logan Bruss. How do you even grade a Los Angeles Rams draft class at this point?
All right. I mean, we just gave a grade for Marquise Brown. Do we have to include Von Miller and Matthew Stafford and a Lombardi trophy in this grade?
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
It's an A. If you
good job. Yeah,
it's an A if you count all of those things. And even though Von Miller's not on the team anymore, you got the trophy, and that's
got the trophy
over the hump there with Matthew Stafford. So yeah, the Rams they were having fun. You saw video of them at their little draft party during the first round, and it's pretty cool actually when you have your head coach and your GM sitting there talking with people while the draft's going on. And, oh, look at this, UT Chattanooga, Cole Strange off the board. We were hoping to get him. So we went with a different guard, Logan Bruss, in round 3 instead. And they were having a good time, and they're still on that post-Super Bowl win high. So
sure.
with looking at it that way, you give them an A, but
in terms of this haul,
they got those players last year, so I'm not counting them. So they're going to get I'll not give them an F. I'll give them a D because I don't even know if any of these guys are going to make an impact. But actually, Kyron Williams, 5th-round running back, those types of players make impacts all the time. Carnell Lake, I like him. I think he's going to stick on a roster. You drafted a couple of offensive linemen, a couple of cornerbacks, and you sort of pray.
Yeah, and we talk about the Rams' approach to the draft a lot. It's just volume It's all quantity, not quality. It's all cheap labor. And I'm sure a tackle turned guard from Wisconsin will start right away and be a 4-year starter. And if they choose to resign him, so be it. If not, they'll let him test the market and they'll get another comp pick back, as they often do. I don't think it's an accident at all that half of their 8 picks are on defensive backs. Just throw a bunch of defensive backs in the mix and see how it works out. If one hits, great. If 2 hits, woo, I mean, Darian Kendrick, he's a very red flagged off the field player, but he was heavily recruited and he won 2 national championships in a row with Georgia and then Clemson the year before, so, take a chance on him. But, these mid-round picks are often on linebackers and guards and running backs. And that's what they did again. Bruss and Kyron Williams aren't premium positions. Remember that Henderson is a free agent after this year. So Williams would probably get a role a year from now as the pure passing down guy. And I don't want to hang on him too long, but he's just interesting because now that he's a Ram, no one cares that his 40 times stinks and is, once he's in camp, coaches are going to love this guy. And, we'll see from there. I'm not saying he's the steal of the draft or anything, but all of a sudden you're a Ram now. I don't care that you didn't have a great short shuttle,
Absolutely. I'm having an allergy attack over here.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah. But yeah, it's just a really hard class to grade and a ton of a ton of late round offensive linemen just throwing darts at the dartboard.
Right. That's
a lot of these drafts I'm seeing. And it was the same thing for the 49ers. Let's look at the Niners, who also didn't have a first round pick. We'll save the Seahawks for last since there's a lot more to talk about with that team. I really love the first pick for the 49ers in Drake Jackson, a defensive end that I think will be a better NFL player than he was a college player. And you almost have to go all the way back to his freshman tape where he was playing at a bigger size to see how he's actually going to fit in the NFL. Because I think he got too slimmed down and was really one-dimensional as an outside linebacker. And his coaching staff wanted him to get down. He's actually under 250 into the 240s, I guess, was his playing weight. And that's why he looks so light. So, man, you see the flexibility and the burst off the edge. And you're like, man, I love that. But not enough secondary moves, not enough power with his moves, not enough speed to power, not enough strength against the run. And then you go back to his freshman tape and it looked like a different guy. He was so much thicker, all the way down to his ankles. He just looked thicker. And he was already up to 270 pounds from like 254 at the combine to his pro day. So clearly he can be bigger, which is a good sign for teams. And I'm sure teams told him, hey, get bigger. So I like that pick because of the potential it could be as an every down player across from Nick Bosa. And they've needed that ever since D Ford's had all those injuries.
Do you think I'm right to say that he's going to be 265, 270, 4'3" defensive end, hand in the dirt guy, which is what he's best at?
100%. That's
good.
What
he's good. That makes me very happy. And
I like college, his freshman year, that's what he was then. That's what he's going to be for the 49ers. And he was still able to work out well and show off all that flexibility and do backflips on draft day. And so that flexibility is what's key for pass rushers in the NFL with long arms. He has that. And so, maybe you found something really special there in Drake Jackson, late second round. So I love the value there. And then I start to have some big problems with what the 49ers did next. As much as I like the Drake Jackson pick and the potential with that one, and it could just be a situational rusher, which would have some value even in the second round. But I love the Drake Jackson pick. Did not like at all the Tyrion Davis-Price pick, third round running back. Back-to-back years with third-round running backs. Trey Sermon didn't play hardly at all for the 49ers last year. So you would think they would do something different, and they kind of did the same. They went back and got a big school, big running back. So clearly they're trying to accomplish something, and it just, I don't know if these guys are fits in Kyle Shanahan's wide zone because they always end up with the 4-3 guy who's got speed and that can threaten the corner. And that's what happened last year with the 6th rounder with speed beating out the bigger-bodied running back that they drafted in Trey Sermon in the 3rd round. So we'll see if Tyrion Davis-Price becomes, the number 1 running back potentially, which is what you would hope if you draft a 3rd rounder. But we saw a lot of 3rd round running backs in this class, and I didn't really like any of the picks from James Cook on down, drafting backup running backs, situational running backs that high in the class. And I didn't like that about the Tyrion Davis-Price, even though there's a lot to like about Price, who's a thicker running back. A lot of speed in Danny Gray, wide receiver in round 3. He's more of a catch and run or, threaten the defense deep receiver, not much in the intermediate, not much of a route runner. So a work in progress there. We'll see, but he can take a slant to the house, which is what Kyle Shanahan likes in his offense. And then like a lot of these teams went with a whole bunch of offensive linemen and throwing some darts on day 3. They went Spencer Burford out of UTSA, offensive tackle in the 4th round, probably will kick into guard. And then Nick Zakel from Fordham in the 6th round, who's a tackle in college that will probably kick into guard in the NFL. Then a slot corner, Samuel Womack out of Toledo in the 5th. An outside corner, Tariq Castro-Fields, which is one of the better values in this class, corner from Penn State in the 6th round. Kalia Davis, who's wider than he is tall, 6'1", 300-pound defensive tackle out of UCF, and finished it up with Mr. Irrelevant quarterback Brock Purdy, who's got a lot has been made of the hand measurements, Matt, for Kenny Pickett. Brock Purdy came in with the exact perfect hand measurement to hold on to a clipboard. So that
exactly,
that is what Brock Purdy is probably they're hoping he's a practice squad guy in year 1 and really signals that they don't plan on having Jimmy Garoppolo around into the season, and Mr. Irrelevant probably long-term backup, but looks like a Shanahan, sort of a well-coached quarterback in round 7. I'm interested to hear the outsiders' thoughts though on the 49ers class here.
Yeah, and we touched on Jackson. I love that pick. To me, that's like plug him in as a little bit bigger version of D Ford, let him go. He could be one of these steals of this draft. I'm with you on the rest of it, I think, though. I mean, Davis Price was a guy that I kept thinking, man, I'm going to get this guy at the beginning of the 3rd round of my rookie drafts after he goes in the 6th round of the Chiefs. And boy, I like this player a lot. And as was the case with a lot of running backs, as you mentioned, 3rd round, end of 3rd round, early 4th, like, ooh, that's a little rich for this crop of tier 2, tier 3 running backs, including him. And it has a little bit of Joe Williams feel to it, that Shanahan stood on the table for him and overdrafted the guy,
Shanahan will do that. He has his favorites. He's like the drunk guy at the bar and collects all these phone numbers at the end of the night and is really jazzed up about it. And then the next day wakes up and is like, okay, what happened? I don't really want, I don't want any of these phone numbers anymore. And then the guys end up in his doghouse. And, there was some off-field character stuff, and Joe Williams just didn't really have the desire. And we'll see if that's what really, if Davis Price has issues like that, because there was some commitment issues with him as well. But they've been trying to fit this like more power inside game with they drafted a 3rd round running back and 2 offensive linemen last year, and they did it again this year. It's like, well, they're trying to fit it in, but guess what happens? You end up handing the ball off to your wide receiver because you need that explosive ability and those wide zone runners. So I don't know. It just seems like they're really trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, and it's just not what their DNA is.
Yeah, and another thing they've been looking for a long time, going back to like Goodwin, is just a burner track guy on the outside. Danny Gray might be the fastest guy in this draft. I mean, he's not a Deebo Samuel replacement or any kind of challenge to Ayuk. To me, I think he does a couple things well, and it's really be fast down the sidelines, and that has value in a running system if you can get people out of the box. But I mean, we'll see. I have no qualms with that pick, nor do I have any qualms with either one of the offensive linemen, but I'm not doing cartwheels over them either. I do like the 2 corners they drafted, and I know Castro Fields was inconsistent on tape, a work in progress, whatever nice word you want to use, but there's a lot of talent there from a size speed quotient. I thought he'd go much faster or much higher or earlier. And Samuel Womack wasn't a guy I knew a lot about before the draft, but kind of paid some attention to him since. I bet he'll be your slot corner before long.
Yep, his scouting report reads a lot like K'Wan Williams, who just left.
Yeah.
He's got a little bit more top speed, and both Womack and Castro Fields ran high 4.3s. And to be honest with you, if you just swapped Tariq Castro Fields with 3rd rounder Tyrion Davis Price, I'd probably like the class a lot better value-wise.
Right.
6'1", 4.3 corner in round 3 makes sense, and a running back in round 6 makes sense. Yeah. And I think that was one of the things with this entire class is there was a lot of prospects that were 5th rounders, and teams drafted them in the 3rd round and teams drafted them in the 6th round. There was just like a lot of players in that middle zone that teams, and I think that's why we started seeing running backs go higher, because they're all kind of in the same group. A lot of mid-round guys really from round 3 all the way through round 6. But overall,
I also think round 7 across the league, people don't care at all about anymore.
Not at all. I mean,
my team took a 2nd quarterback. Your team took a quarterback after a year after taking one in 3rd overall. Like, those 7th rounders to me are just kind of like joke picks anymore.
Right. Taking players that you probably expect will get cut after training camp, and you hope to put them back on the practice squad.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. Super quick note on that. Like with the Steelers, I think they took a second quarterback just because they realized no undrafted free agent rookie quarterback is going to sign with the team that drafted one in the first round. And unfortunately, Dwayne Haskins passed away, so they need a fourth camp arm, but not like they had any value in the player, I don't think. I think Purdy's kind of the same situation. Like, what undrafted free agent quarterback wants to sign with the Niners or the Jets or Jags or, someone drafted a quarterback super high recently.
Right. No, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, you're playing that undrafted free agent game.
Mm-hmm.
So overall, I feel similar to this class as I do the Arizona Cardinals class. I just like a couple of picks better and a little bit more potential impact from the edge rusher there. So it's on the C+, B- cusp. So that's how I feel about this class.
Yeah, and they didn't have a first. I mean, obviously that's a theme in this division, but
they don't get credit for Trey Lance anymore. That was
no.
last year's grade. Next, the Seattle Seahawks, the only team in the division to draft in the first 40 picks, and actually they took 3 picks before anybody else took any selections in the division. Seattle Seahawks draft grade next. But let's talk about Built Bars. With summer coming, you're going to be going on vacations. You need some snacks in your bags. Keep your family fed on the go. Throw them in your bags. Throw them in your kids' backpacks. Put them in your car. Make sure everyone has a bar so you are fueled for your summer adventures, and no more sacrificing delicious food for health. That is the best part about Built Bars, because they are a healthy snack that you will want to reach for. They are covered in 100% real chocolate, which means with Built Bar, you can eat healthy while enjoy doing it. Have you tried the Built Bar Puffs? People are going crazy for those Built Bar Puffs. The first ever protein-infused marshmallow, churro puff, banana cream pie, tons of puff flavors. There was a brownie batter puff, which I believe is already sold out at Built.com, only 140 calories. It's crazy. I don't know how they do it. They make them taste good first, make them healthy after that somehow. But most Built Bars contain only 130, 140 calories, only 4 grams of sugar, only 4 grams of net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. Get a mix box. New flavors coming all the time at Built.com. And with our promo code, you can get 15% off your order. Go to Built.com. Use promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off. That is promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. Seattle Seahawks. I thought there was going to be some movement with the Seahawks in the draft.
Yeah, right.
They sort of hung out, stood pat at pick number 9, and I think they got a really nice player, and they didn't screw it up and say, he's a not a good enough run blocker. He came from the wrong system. We don't like him, so we're going to go Trevor Penning instead of Charles Cross. They didn't do anything Seahawksy and weird at pick 9. They just went with the best player available at a need position, Charles Cross. Get your long-term left tackle in there. So I actually like that selection for the Seattle Seahawks there. I don't know if the quarterback is in place that he should be pass protecting for right now, but right. Good pick in Charles Cross. They came back with picks 40 and 41 in the second round. Boye Mafe out of Minnesota, pass rusher, and then running back Kenneth Walker. Abraham Lucas, another offensive tackle who is more of a project out of Washington State, but has some traits. Kobe Bryant, corner from Cincinnati, a nice player who I could see coming in and playing even somewhat early in his career for the Seahawks. And then they went again, sort of like they did with tackle. They went with a safe pick, and then a high upside pick. They went Tariq Woolen out of Texas San Antonio in the 5th round, who's got all the length and speed in the world. Can he cover people? But he's sort of the Richard Sherman comps there with someone who's long and athletic and super long arms, former wide receiver like Richard Sherman, and a 5th round pick like Richard Sherman was. So let's see if they can hit on another one of those in Tariq Woolen. Tyreek Smith out of Ohio State, the defensive end in the 5th round, and a couple of 7th round wide receivers with all kinds of speed. Bo Melton from Rutgers, and one of my favorite players I saw late in the process from Lenore-Rhyne, Derek the Freak Young, who's about 6'2", 220, and can fly, and he did everything for that Lenore-Rhyne offense. Small school guy that has potential to be a little something in the NFL. So overall, one of the I don't want to say one of. This was by far the best Seattle Seahawks draft class, partially because they traded away a superstar quarterback to get a bunch of extra picks, and including a top 10 pick, but one of the best Seahawks draft classes since, drafting Earl Thomas and Bobby Wagner and Richard Sherman and the whole Legion of Boom gang.
Yeah, and again, there's some themes here. You kind of spelled some of it out. 2 tackles, 2 edge, 2 corners, 2 receivers. You know, like they're attacking a couple spots, and they're all premium positions. So let's give Seattle credit, with the exception of Kenneth Walker, of course, which kind of sticks out like a sore thumb. But you teased my dynasty ranks. I have him very high. I like the player. I kind of sitting here would rather that name was Malik Willis, you know, but hey, you know, I get it. You know, they're waiting till next year. I understand that. They're building a nest. I think that there were 8 premium players in this draft, and Cross was number 8, and they benefited from Atlanta taking Drake London, and you get one of the 8 in the 9th pick, and then Lucas at 72. I think that you might have a pair of bookend tackles for quite some time, and like you said, though, both of them are premium protectors, but not run blockers. They're both very similar profile. One's, you know, the B- version of Cross, you know, that they're good feet, finesse, you know, protectors. I don't know that changes how they play football, but they drafted 2 tackles. Good for them. Mafe will fit in immediately. I mean, I think he's going to be a Pete Carroll favorite. He would have fit in with the Legion of Boom teams. You know, I think that is an obvious one. And I think the Kobe Bryant, Tariq Woolen dichotomy is really interesting, in that Bryant is he won the award for best corner in the country. He's as plug and play as you get, very high football IQ, where Woolen is, let's see, but if he hits, he's going to hit huge. So one's the plug and play, one's the project. And you mentioned Young, the really interesting upside receiver. We'll see what happens with Metcalf long term, but you're not going to hear from Young probably for a year. And Melton's very different, but he's real gadgety, you know, really good with the ball in his hands. I mean, he given on end around, things like that. So I don't have many qualms with their draft. And, you know, everyone's looking at, well, they have Chris Carson and they have Rashad Penny. I don't know if Chris Carson's ever going to play another down. And Penny's only signed for 1 more year and has one of the worst injury histories in the league.
This is the bizarro Chicago Bears draft. A bunch of early picks and no quarterback. The Chicago Bears have the quarterback that they drafted last year. They had no early picks and then didn't help out their quarterback. And so
they need to have a baby together. Yeah,
exactly. If you could just give Justin Fields to the Seahawks, they might have something, you know, with that offense now. And you have your left tackle of the future in Charles Cross to go with Gabe Jackson and, you know, Damian Lewis, they drafted in the 3rd round a couple years ago. You got Noah Fant now tied in from the Broncos, and obviously Lockett and Metcalf, and a running game with Penny. And there's some injuries there. So with Carson and Penny and now Walker, they're going to have a stud running back, and they're going to try to run the heck out of the football. And then, you know, adding a ton of players on the defensive side of the ball. They've always been a mid to late round cornerback team. And so we'll see if they can continue to hit on those types of players, but really it's all about the pass rush. So their second selection was Boye Mafe, and he could be a stand-up rusher. He can put his hand in the ground, is a really versatile player for a multiple defense there on the defensive line for the Seahawks. So I love this draft for the Seahawks. I think they nailed it. And if they would have just drafted a quarterback, I'd be giving them an A+, but they didn't. So I'm going to go A-.
If Malik Willis's name was there instead of Kenneth Walker, would you give them an A or an A+? Or even Ritter or whoever?
I would give them an A+ if it was Malik Willis instead of Abraham Lucas.
Okay, that's fair.
In the 3rd round. Then now I
think Walker has value.
And of all the teams that, you know, because Kenneth Walker is going to be a good player for them, you know.
He's going to be a good player. Yeah.
I didn't love that pick, but to be honest with you, when you look at, I would rather have Kenneth Walker in the 2nd round than Tyrion Davis-Price in the 3rd round.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to draft one, the best one. You know, if you're going to draft a running back, it better be good if you're going to draft them early, because you're missing out on a potential starter elsewhere. And I don't know if they got a potential starter in Abraham Lucas. So that's where I'm looking. And those quarterbacks were all still on the board, right? Let me make sure I'm right about that, because I'm pretty sure.
I think you're right.
Everybody, but I think
that's only the 8th pick in the 3rd round.
Ritter went the 10th pick. So all 3 of those quarterbacks, nice. Rounders, were still there. And I after the draft, Pete Carroll said that if Drew Lock was in this draft class, he would have been the #1 quarterback selected, which is wrong. Clearly.
Which is wrong.
Yeah. He was a 2nd round prospect as a prospect, so he wouldn't have gone in front of Kenny Pickett. He would have been in the mix with all the rest of those guys. But we've also got the information of seeing him in the NFL, which means I would rather have any of those guys over Drew Lock, because I don't believe in Drew Lock at all. But clearly the Seahawks do, or they're just waiting for the Browns to cut Baker Mayfield, because I don't get it, because they've done a good job of replenishing some talent, and that offense could be something if they just get a quarterback in there.
Yeah,
because we just saw what the Broncos went through with a ton of good pass catchers and running backs and a pretty good offensive line and a defense and the same exact quarterback that the Seahawks have right now. And it didn't work. So I don't know why the Seahawks expect it to work for them.
The only thing I believe about this Seahawk lock marriage and propaganda or whatever is they had a really good grade on him coming out of school. I believe that to be true, and I think that's where it ends.
Right. And I could see that
Fine,
whatever
well, our coaches are better than yours. We're going to turn him into a star, right.
And clearly they didn't have a high grade. Like, the league did not like Malik Willis. How did the whole draft process go through with everybody and analysts really loving Malik Willis and even talking about him? Man, look out, maybe even number 2 overall to the Detroit Lions, right? And analysts loved him. And how did it not come out that some like scout somewhere, some GM somewhere was like, hey, we have a 3rd round grade on Malik Willis, or we have a 4th round grade on Malik Willis. And nobody really ever mentioned anything like that pre-draft. I never heard any of that. I heard some of it about some other quarterbacks, but I never really heard it about Kenny Pickett and Malik Willis, which is why when the draft got closer, I felt really good about Malik Willis and Kenny Pickett being first rounders. And it turned out Kenny Pickett was, but Malik Willis for the Seattle Seahawks to have not drafted Malik Willis
right
in that spot in the 3rd round, that tells you something. That was not a high grade.
Right. The one thing I have heard about Willis post-draft is his interviews, his visits. Everyone likes the young man, the personality, the work ethic, the intelligence, they're going to put the work in. But on the whiteboard, he was a kindergartner. That he had just so far to go with basic NFL passing concepts. Not because he doesn't know because he's dumb. It's just they just didn't do that. And he didn't have to. It's like, boy, this guy is a year away from being a year away.
Right. And that was the big negative that everybody talked about with Malik Willis is like, man, you look at this offense at Liberty and it does not translate at all.
I don't even throw to the middle of the field.
Right. He was not prepared for being prepared for the NFL. No, that's totally. But man, that is amazing. So I'm looking at it right now. Yeah. Desmond Ritter went 2 picks later. So like, even if you thought that
swap out Lucas for Ritter, I would like to look
Willis
at that.
Was too far away. Like you passed because Ritter's like ready to go right now. Like I would for sure 100% rather see what Ritter becomes than go with Lock.
Side note, we have not mentioned the name Matt Corral. Matt Corral's head coach in college was a Kiffin. Pete Carroll and the Kiffins are unbelievably close. So that name was Abraham Lucas over Corral, too. That's not exactly a ringing endorsement for Matt Corral.
Who was also a 3rd round pick, and Corral went with the 30th pick. So all 3 of those quarterbacks went within 20 picks after the Seahawks selected Abraham Lucas in the 3rd round.
And hey, taking the tackle's never a bad idea. I'm not killing Lucas here. But the fact that they didn't take any of those quarterbacks is, a little telling for that team.
Yes, for that specific team as well. Because I watched Abraham Lucas and I liked some of the traits, but I was like, I wouldn't be fighting to take him, especially if you have the needed quarterback like Desmond Ritter 2 picks later.
And you already taken a tackle too.
But well, good for my Niners.
I like the class.
Good for my Niners. Good draft class for the Seahawks, yet they didn't get a quarterback. And so they're good enough to maybe be mediocre to where they won't be drafting high enough to get the top quarterback next year either.
I still see 8 wins as their ceiling and more likely 6.
They're not going to.
They're going to be in the hunt for, if there really are 5 first-round quarterbacks next year, they'll be in a position to get one of them.
Their roster is better than it was last year, but it isn't so much better to make up for the difference in going from Russell Wilson to Drew Lock.
Right.
No, that's well put. So, yeah, maybe they will be in consideration for one of those top quarterbacks next year. Okay, those are the drafts in the NFC West. Hit me up if you disagree with how I broke those down at BD Peacock, at Williamson NFL. Thanks for making Peacock and Williamson your first listen. Remember, jump on the live stream with us on YouTube Tuesday. It's a Twitter Tuesday.
Oh, yeah, nice.
Twitter Tuesday questions in as well at BD Peacock and at Williamson NFL. But have a little bit more fun if you can get away from your lunch hour, maybe, because we're going noon Eastern, or if you're just in the morning, or you know what, say, hey boss, this is more important than my job for the next half hour. I'm going to jump on with Peacock and Williamson in the chat. We're going to chat about post-draft stuff, NFL. And so, yeah, jump on the live stream on the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. We are on the Locked On NFL YouTube channel. So make sure you go subscribe to that. Thumbs up to all our videos. Hit the bell so you're notified when we do have a new episode. And Matt and I will be back tomorrow live right here, Peacock and Williamson.